On December 27, 1892, Livingstone and Biddle College, now known as Johnson C. Smith University, played in Salisbury, North Carolina, with Biddle winning 5-0. Over time, HBCU football has evolved. HBCU football's popularity continues to rise. Millions attend games each year and millions more watch on television. The HBCU bands provide some of the top entertainment in the country. Over that time, some of the best players to ever play in the National Football League played at HBCUs. Every Monday through Friday on the HBCU Football Daily Podcast, national radio and television host Donal Ware takes a look at what's happening in HBCU football and talks with coaches, players, administrators, and media about the season. Make sure you join the conversation on social media now. Here's your host, Donal Ware.
Thank you for joining me on another edition of the HBCU Football Daily Podcast for today, Monday, October 23rd. I'm Donal Ware. Week 8 in HBCU football is in the books. We had a couple of upsets, as a matter of fact, so we're going to run through the HBCU football scoreboard for Week 8. West Virginia State fell to Frostburg 28-14 on Thursday, and as you know, North Carolina Central defeated Morgan State 16-10. Games on Saturday. Florida A&M defeated Texas Southern 31-21. Jackson State got back in the win column, defeating Mississippi Valley State 21-6. It was Southern over Bethune-Cookman 28-18. That Western Division in the SWAC continues to remain super competitive. Alcorn State also with the victory, 31-7 over Arkansas Pine Bluff. It was Howard coming from behind in the latter stages of the football game against Norfolk State, defeating the Spartans 27-23, the MEAC opener for both. So Howard goes to 1-0. Norfolk State goes to 0-1. I think that this year the MEAC winner will not have lost a football game. That's just my thought. So if you've got one loss, based upon that, then you're definitely behind the 8 ball. South Carolina State defeated Delaware State 35-7, sets up the showdown between South Carolina State and North Carolina Central on Thursday night, ESPNU in Durham. North Carolina A&T fell to Richmond 33-10. It was Hampton falling to Delaware 47-3. Both A&T and Hampton struggling in CAA play, but somebody's got it now. Hampton does have one victory in CAA play. Somebody's got to win next week as Hampton and North Carolina A&T play in Hampton. Tennessee State overwhelmed Lincoln of California 54-0. Bluefield State did away with, Bowie State did away with Bluefield State 40-11. Central State all over Clark Atlanta 48-21. It was Florida Memorial defeating Weber International 34-29. You remember, I don't know, maybe Friday I mentioned some of the games as we previewed that game of the week between Johnson C. Smith and Fayetteville State, which we'll talk about. And I said, Virginia Union doesn't want to fool around with Lincoln. Lincoln's got some momentum. Virginia Union did exactly that, did not fool around with Lincoln, defeated the Lions 57-0. Winston-Salem State got a touchdown late, pulled it out against St. Aug's 24-17. Remember, even though Winston-Salem State has 2 losses, Fayetteville State is winning some close games, but the two meet. I think maybe this week, but Fayetteville State and Winston-Salem State still have to meet. Livingstone at the end of the game, last play of the game, defeated Shaw 27-26. Virginia of Lynchburg getting its first victory of the season, 45-42 over Lane. So we now have no more winless teams. Well, no, let me take that back. We still have 2 winless teams in HBCU football. Langston over Arkansas Baptist 51-20. Let's see, Lincoln of Missouri falling to Missouri Southern 63-5. Lincoln remains winless on the season. Also remaining winless, Texas College, because it fell to Oklahoma Panhandle State 44-32. Benedict left no doubt, defeating Kentucky State 63-14. In the HBCU National Game of the Week, Fayetteville State pulled it out against Johnson C. Smith 14-7. I thought that would be a bit of a defensive battle. I mean, I guess it was, but it wasn't great offense either. But I just felt like Fayetteville State had been more battle tested. It remains undefeated in conference play. Johnson C. Smith now with 2 losses. I mean, Fayetteville State basically has to win one more game. And again, I can't remember if Fayetteville State and I'm going to try to look it up. Fayetteville State and Winston-Salem State, those two play. Okay, if that's next week, it would still mean, and let's say Fayetteville State or Winston-Salem State, let's say Winston-Salem State won that football game, and let me look it up here really quickly. As a matter of fact, the two play next week. So if Winston-Salem State were to win that game, then Fayetteville State loses the game the next week, and Winston wins its game the next week, then Winston would be champions. But that's a long way down the road. Winston's got to win the next 2 games. All Fayetteville State has to do is win one of the next 2. Fort Valley State over Morehouse 31-3. Morehouse still winless on the season. Fort Valley State still keeping its hopes alive for a appearance in the SIAC championship game. Talked about this on Friday as well. Elizabeth City State and Virginia State. And like I said, if you're Virginia State, I mean, this is one of those games you don't want to fool around with. Elizabeth City State, who, listen, Elizabeth City State had 1 win coming into that game, but they'd been playing some decent football. You could tell they're coming, right? Well, they came and defeated Elizabeth City State, defeated Virginia State 17-16. But, okay, 1 loss, and I think I mentioned this, even if Virginia State loses this game, it still has Union at the end of the season. I'm not sure who Virginia State plays next week, but it's got to win next week. And then you've got the matchup against Union to end the season. That whoever wins that game would go to the CIAA championship. Tuskegee eking it out over Savannah State 21-14. Miles defeated Allen 28-21 in a good football game. Listen, Allen is legit. Miles is making a bit of a comeback after losing a couple of weeks ago. And Edward Waters does it again. Touchdown with 1:08 remaining. Defeats Albany State 31-27. If you remember last week, Edward Waters defeated Tuskegee on the last play of the game at Tuskegee's homecoming. And Edward Waters, boy, I tell you, 5-3, 6-2, probably not going to make it to the SIAC championship game, but having a much better season than I believe a lot of people expected. So that's a look at the scoreboard. If you missed any of those scores, you can log on to our website at boxtorow.com. Depending upon when you're watching or listening to this, the HBCU National Players of the Week will be released, as well as the HBCU coaches and media polls. Don't forget to tell a couple of friends about the HBCU Football Daily Podcast, where you can listen on the boxtorow.com page, as well as iHeartMedia.com, and you can watch on the Box to Row YouTube channel. Talk with you tomorrow.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of the HBCU Football Daily Podcast. You can also listen to the podcast at boxtorow.com, iHeartMedia, or wherever you get your podcasts. Don't forget to get your HBCU football fix on Box to Row with Donal Ware each weekend on the radio station near you, and on SiriusXM on HBCU, Channel 142, and on ESPNU Radio on SiriusXM, Channel 84. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Box to Row for the latest in HBCU football, and don't forget to tell a friend.